Howdy everybody, we're back with some RPG horror stories. Let's jump into our first one. Our first story is going to be from user My Name is Pizza and is titled Player Decided He Would Dictate How the Game Played Out Over the DM. As the Dungeon Master, I know how important players are to a game of D&D. The game literally cannot exist without them, otherwise it'd just be a book. So I try to put some emphasis on player feedback, see what they do and don't like, and I try to show them a good time. But for one game, there was a player that didn't really give me feedback. He just kept saying no when the game was going a way he didn't like. Not, can we do this, or I'm not a fan of that, just no. Like it was a power bomb of a word. So I run a lot of games that are blatantly themed after other series, Dead by Daylight, Grand Blue, FNAF, Deltarune, etc. And for this campaign, we were running a Demon Slayer themed game. Alright, so I'm gonna kind of just jump in here real quick off the bat. I'm personally curious, my beautiful viewers, what are your thoughts on a campaign that is clearly a ripoff of an existing IP or series? I personally don't have any issues with it, assuming we aren't expecting a Mary Sue or Gary Sue from that series to show up and fix shit, like i.e. Luke Skywalker rolls in to save the day kind of thing. I think it can be interesting giving your players a chance to live out a fantasy in some strange anime universes that maybe they don't get a chance to really live out. So I kind of like the idea of it, but maybe you guys are different. Everyone was a Hashira, which is demon slaying sword fighter kind of people, for those of you who have not seen Demon Slayer, with their own breathing techniques that aligned with their classes, homebrewed spells and feats and everything. Our problem player was a sound breathing rogue Hashira like Tengen. I'll put a picture of Tengen on screen right now. We also had a flame-breathing paladin, a stone-breathing barbarian, and a love-breathing bard. It's an interesting concept. I am curious if they make the breathing more magic-based or just like flavoring their class features or something like that. For those of you who have not seen Demon Slayer, when the Hashira, the characters with the swords hunting demons, are like using their swords, like their power-up kind of stuff, you know, like Kamehameha or Hadouken or, you know, Shoryuken, if we're talking Street Fighter and Dragon Ball Z respectively, like, it's like their powers kind of thing. Some of the sword fighters have like fire powers. So like they do like weird breathing techniques and like fire shoots out of the sword or whatever, or water or whatever the fuck have you. So personally, I'm kind of curious, like, is this breathing magic based? Is it like, you know, I cast burning hands with it? Or is this like a flavoring of the class feature? So like the stone barbarian, like stone breathing is like them raging is like doing a breath and their whole body turns to stone kind of thing. Like, is that it? I'm kind of curious because it's an interesting concept. I personally not seen any Demon Slayer homebrew, but I did come across a massive PDF once that was like all Naruto themed, and it was actually pretty cool and balanced. It was for 2014 5e. It was pretty interesting actually. I was kind of surprised. Our current session was in the entertainment district, and we got into the part where Gyutaro appeared to save Daki and face off against the party. The way that it was different was Daki made a break for it and escaped to the rooftops. Our other three Hashira followed her to the rooftops because the sound-breathing rogue decided he was going to solo Gyutaro. I told him this was a bad idea and that Gyutaro would smother him in a 1v1, but they were insistent that they could handle it. Okay, so I think the DM personally is handling this well so far. It never hurts to periodically remind a player if they're deciding to do something that maybe might hurt them, be like, hey, your PC's probably going to have some trouble here. This enemy looks tough to 1v1. Like, your players, if they are experienced enough in combat, should kind of be able to look at somebody, especially if it's a demon man with, what does he have, swords or scythes or some shit. Like, you should, like, I feel like a really well experienced adventurer should be able to look at a person and go, that person is going to be tough. Personally though, I'll say this as well, if I was running a Demon Slayer based game, I don't know if I would follow the story this closely. The entertainment district arc is an entire arc in the anime, and I know it is in the manga. I haven't read the manga, but the anime has a large arc that involves the entertainment district. I think it's like an entire season actually, or half a season. Either way, big part of the story. So I don't know if I would personally follow it that closely. I might use similar locations like the entertainment district, but I would probably make new baddies to fight instead. Just because I wouldn't want my players to maybe meta potentially, or feel like they have to do things in a certain order to make it work that way. Gyutaro and our rogue have a bit of back and forth dialogue. He makes some witty quips, and Gyutaro decides he's had enough talking and gets ready to strike. I tell the rogue to roll for initiative since the fight's about to start. No. I asked him what he meant by no. The fight was about to start. I don't want to fight him if he's just gonna kill me. He said he could handle it before, so I was confused. I asked him what he wanted to do, because they wouldn't just monologue while everyone else was fighting Daki. I'm sure I can. I was absolutely baffled. He really just wanted to talk with Gyutaro, expecting him to stand there while everybody else fought Daki up above. Paladin offered to come back down and help the rogue fight Gyutaro. No. Again, just the word no. Okay. Problem player here is being a stick in the mud for sure. One, they probably realize they're about to be on the receiving end of the find out after the fucking around part. And two, they need to be more yes and when it comes to their role-playing improvisation. Just saying no isn't valid in all cases. You can say no, but don't expect the game to continue if you're going to refuse to actively participate in the game. I was fed up. I told him that he could either play the game with everyone else and roll initiative, or he could leave the table, because Gyutaro isn't interested in just talking with the guy for the whole fight. Maybe that was a bit harsh, but I was so frustrated with this guy at this point that I was at my limit. No. Now he was refusing to leave the table, and now the other players are getting sick of him too. He won't fight, he won't leave the table, he won't do anything but what he wanted to do at that very moment. Problem player is just acting like an angry toddler here, like, if I cross my arms and I say no, then you have to do what I say because I said it first or some stupid bullshit. It's acting like a fucking toddler. Frustrated and out of options, I decided to end the game since we've been playing for about 5 hours anyway. Everyone agreed, and the rogue just shrugged his shoulders, packed up, and left. Didn't even say goodbye to anyone. Later, I would ask the party what we should do about our rogue, and they agreed that he needed to do what a Hashira would and try to slay a demon. Once we were in agreement, I messaged the rogue and put my foot down that this was not his game, and if he wouldn't fight with his friends, then he would be excluded from the game. I didn't like it, and I had to rework Daki and Gyutaro's levels to scale with everyone, but I was willing to do it. No. Again, told him, fine. Then that's the end of your character's story. Gyutaro isn't going to talk anymore. He's just going to kill off your rogue. Okay, at this point, instead of telling problem player what will happen, let them know that if they are not going to actively participate, they are out. Just cut them out then and there. It's not worth getting into it with them what was going to happen if they don't end up showing up. I personally wouldn't want this person at my table if they're going to be such a stick in the mud about this. I understand being opinionated about things. I understand being opinionated about what you would like to happen or thinking that what is happening is not cool. We've all been there. You're trying to do something. Maybe you have an idea for something. It doesn't go that way. But when you're actively discussing that with your DM, you can, like, if the DM goes, hey, we're going to roll initiative here, you can say no, but it should be no and. It should be no, or no but, you know, no, I really wanted to like this to happen. Is there any way we can make this happen instead of having fighting happen or something? Like, I really wasn't planning to fight this person. I was trying to talk them down, sort of thing. Like, that's at least you attempting to move it forward, but then always still be open with the conversation. You know, if your DM goes, hey, this is how it's been laid out. You guys are clearly an enemy to this person. He's trying to protect Daki, who's up on the roof currently fighting for her fucking life. You are not going to be able to talk this man down to not fight. He wants to fight. Like, this is going to happen this way. Like, this is unfortunately like the way it's rolling here. That would be okay. Because then also as a player then you should go, okay, cool. I tried at least, you know, whatever. But just being a fucking stick in the mud, it's not cool. It's really shitty. No, he's just gonna leave and get away. He was gonna have his character utterly abandon his teammates to fight 2 high-level demons alone. I told him that if his character did this, the Demon Slayer Corps would see it as dishonorable, cowardly, and he'd be lucky to be exiled and not executed. Okay, again, we're getting into the weeds here. Don't elaborate or feed problem player. Just let them know, hey, you're out, we're done. You can figure out the in-game reasoning with the players that actually want to participate later on. I'm a level 13 rogue. They're not going to find me. Well, he's not in the game anymore, so he doesn't get that say now. You can't just do what you want with my character. I would argue that problem player is correct here, to an extent. Others should not control a PC that isn't their PC. But when you are no longer part of the game, sometimes your character needs to be written out. This might involve killing your PC off or making them fuck off into the sunset. I am all for killing a PC off if their player is out instead of stringing them along and having the DM put their own spin on this person's character. Continuing, and you can't just make the whole game what you want it to be. Your actions have consequences, not just for you, but for the rest of the party. And now I'm the one who has to clean up after your mess. I ended the discussion there as I was getting far too heated and wanted to act with a level head. The rogue would never contact any of us on Discord ever again, just occasionally showing up in the group chats to let us know he was still there, although it was clear everyone was still annoyed with his attitude, as to this day he still carries on that he was in the right. It's a shame when people are rude and refuse to be flexible, within reason obviously. If someone's trying to force something like, let's say, sexual themes on you or the like, and it has not been consented with, has there's no consent there, that's a big no-no, obviously. Big takeaway from this: when trying to be a good DM or player at the table, always be willing to talk it out with good reasons on why or why not you're not okay with something. In most cases, no is in fact a complete answer, but you cannot expect to continue to play when you are just saying no and only no. If you were a problem player in this situation, let's just say for example, be flexible. Say, hey, I didn't realize I couldn't just talk it out with this demon for some dumb fucking reason. Can we maybe backtrack? Or can someone else from the party hop down and help me? My PC's now way in over their head. It's okay to realize the thought process you had is not going to work out. Most likely though, problem player has a major case of main character syndrome and thought they could just 1v1 or force this demon and just chat with them the entire time, and realized they were going to get fucked on because the DM was like, hey, actually, no, you are going to get fucked. Before we hop into the next story, check me out on Twitch. Links are down in the description. I stream throughout the week. Would love to get to hang out with you there. Our next story is from user Puff the Magic Dragon 11 and is titled Explaining the Rules Causes a Player to Give Up Hope. I'm going to just jump in here before we even start reading this. I do want to make a very important note here. I don't want to call it trigger warning. I just want to call it advisement. There are themes and talk of self-harm or attempted self-harm in this story. Just please be aware that that is a thing. If it's not something you're really comfortable with, I recommend jumping to the next story. But with that said, let's jump into this. To set the stage, I joined a new group a few months ago. I was told that everyone in the group was pretty new to D&D and had roughly 6 months experience with 5e, whereas I've been playing 5e and a little bit of P2E for about 8 to 10 years. Their table was the first one I'd encountered who was using 2024 rules, and having never tried 2024 rules myself, I was excited to try the new rule set. I'd done some research months prior and was intrigued about the new rules, but hadn't yet found anybody to play with. All of my groups were still using 2014 and or homebrew rules for the most part. From what I could tell, 2024 wasn't too different from 2014. New spells, a couple new mechanics, and for the most part, the classes I was interested in didn't change all too much. I was pretty confident I wouldn't have any trouble with this group. If the story involves very specific rulings for 2024 5e, I might be a little in the dark here. I know some of the changes, but I'm not familiar with all of them between 2014 and 2024. I personally play 2014 and have enjoyed it quite a bit. I am not sure if I would swap or not to 2024. So actually, a real quick question I have for you guys here is, has anyone else made the change from 2014 to 2024? Assuming you guys are playing 5e, of course. If so, how are you enjoying it? How does it compare to 2014? Are the changes good changes? Are the spells new and good? Are the class updates really good? Let me know your thoughts in those comments down below. The campaign was hosted on D&D Beyond, making everything pretty seamless. We were level 4, and our group consisted of a barbarian, a wizard, a fighter, a rogue, a druid, and a bard, who was me. That's a pretty big party. We got 6 PCs there. The barbarian, wizard, fighter, and DM were family. The barbarian being the sister, the wizard the brother, the fighter the dad, and the DM was the mother. What was supposed to be a fun campaign turned into a slog fest, and I learned just how inexperienced the other players were, including the DM. I have nothing against new players, and I've played in my fair share with newbies. It's no problem explaining some of the rules as long as you go along, but we were putting the campaign on hold seemingly every 10 to 15 minutes while DM looked up a rule, asked for clarification about the rules, or one of the other players had a question about a ruling. Again, usually not a big issue, except all the questions were basic things everyone should have known before starting the campaign. I had joined in the middle of this group's campaign, so I assumed everybody generally knew what they were doing since, according to them, they were 6 months into it. I learned later that there was never a session zero or clarification of the rules of any kind. Everyone was just thrown into it. General rule I will use: if you can't look up the rule within a minute or so, just take your best guess and move forward. You can always then opt to correct later once you read up later on what that rule is, or, whatever. I personally, if this is someone's first time playing, would not expect them to know all of the rules, but a very basic or minimal understanding would really go a long way. Minimum basic understanding would be like, hey, You're going to be rolling some dice. You're interacting with the world here. You will be told that you need to roll certain checks. To do that, you roll a d20 and then you add modifiers and stuff. Like very minimum stuff like that, I feel like will go a long way at the very least in the beginning. I would say, though, I would hope by 6 months of regular play, assuming regular, like, you know, every week, every 2 weeks, something like that, the DMer players would be more comfortable with the rules. But shit also happens. I'm curious on the ages of these players, actually, because if they're on the younger side, I can understand why they might be forgetting the rules quite a bit. Let's continue the story, though. The types of questions being asked was stuff like, what can I do with my action? What is a bonus action? Whether you're allowed to attack twice in one turn because you have 2 hands. I gritted my teeth throughout the whole thing, telling myself that these were new players and I need to be patient with them. It was immediately clear to me after the first session I was part of that nobody had a clear understanding of what the rules were and what their potential was. It was clearer still that some players hadn't read their character sheets and had no idea how to play. To make matters worse, there was no group dynamic at all. Players frequently went exploring on their own and split up the party, so instead of having one group of 6 accomplishing the main goal, we had groups of 1 or 2 people wandering or attempting to do a task by themselves, not even attempting to work with the other groups to do, quote, the main thing, trademark. This slowed things down even more, with the DM having to jump between players and their perspective to move things along. This was particularly frustrating during combat encounters when one player would be trying to fight the antagonist and the others chose to do nothing with their turn because, as I learned later, they didn't know what they could do or even straight up walking away. Okay, this sounds like a case where the DM is experienced not only with the system but with kind of like the herding cats you sometimes have to deal with players. 6 is a big group for a first-time DM. The DM here in this situation needs to sit down with the group and remind them that this is a cooperative team game. So they should be working together to get things done. They also need to remember they have the ability to say no to people when they want to split the party up too much, and if they're going off topic too much. I am curious how OP found this table. Is this online? Is this through a family friend? Is it through a friendly local game store? To me, it would be odd if this is anything other than through a family friend or something like that, considering the majority of the players and the DM are related, but anything could happen. I didn't say anything at first because I thought a lot of the basic questions were just one-time clarifications given their 6 months experience, and I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the game during the session. But it kept happening, and I started thinking about how best to address the problem. I ended up writing it up in an extremely detailed overview of basic rules, tailored specifically for 2024 at the DM's request. I occasionally used 5etools.com as a resource, but stopped quickly when the DM kept contesting its validity, even after explaining the difference between 5etools.com and 2014.5e.tools.com, and provided screenshots. After that, I switched purely to D&D Beyond to reference rules and materials so nobody would complain, but I still got complaints about its accuracy anyways. Technically, the DM has the power over how rules are interpreted. That being said, it sounds like OP was doing DM a solid by trying to help everybody else get a handle on these rules. Perhaps the DM here prefers to do their own homebrew, which again is perfectly fine to do your own interpretation of the rules, but that DM should be comfortable enough to then quote that stuff. So if we're doing weird shit, so I'll give you an example. Not a rules is written thing. Potions. I personally do a homebrew rule, and it's common at a lot of tables, and I know Baldur's Gate did it as well, Baldur's Gate 3, where if you're going to be drinking a potion, let's say like a health potion, it's only a bonus action if you yourself are drinking it. I also ruled that it's an action if you're going to like lean down and pour it into somebody else's mouth. Bonus action if you're just chugging your own potion kind of thing. Perhaps this is an issue where the DM is kind of coming up with their own homebrew rules, but again, that being said, the DM should know what their homebrew rules are and should not be maybe questioning the viability and the validity of rules as much, unless, of course, they're going to go, hey, no, we actually don't do that here. We do flanking or whatever the random fucking homebrew rules they do, but they need to clarify that and not just go, I don't think that's right. Some of the suggestions I gave and rules that I ended up clarifying were that the group should stick together to complete objectives more efficiently. I don't think that's a rule. Use your class features. Again, that's not a rule. Explanation of the extra attack feature. That is kind of a rule. Explain action economy. Important. Explain weapon properties. Also very important. Explain spells. Also very important. Also How the fuck are people? They're just not reading. If you're going to explain spells, they're just not fucking reading the spells. Like weapon properties, yeah, you might need to explain finesse does this, light does that, reach does this, you know, whatever. The reload property, whatever the fuck have you. But spells, it's in the spell, you know? Cast time, instantaneous, or, you know, action. Duration, instantaneous. You know, you hurl a fireball at a space 120 feet away, 20-foot radius, 8d6 fire damage on a dex, on a failed dex save, success causes half damage or some bullshit like that. They're just not reading the spells if he's having to explain that. I question why the fighter had the mounted combatant feature but had no mount. I don't know if that's necessarily a clarification there. I feel like that's something you should ask probably more casually, being like, hey, I noticed you have this feature when I looked at your character sheet, you know, maybe we should try to ask to do something so you can maybe utilize that. Gave a detailed breakdown of each player's character and what class, features, or feats were available to them both in and out of combat by referencing their character sheets on D&D Beyond. This is a situation where also it's not just like they don't understand the rules. These players are just not fucking reading their character sheets. Assuming these aren't like young kids, if you're gonna play 5e or any tabletop RPG, read your fucking character sheet. Understandable. First couple times you play, first month you're learning a new system, a lot's happening, you're gonna forget shit. If you're playing something week after week after week, you should be able to, in most cases, go, yes, I know what extra attack does. Yes, I know what this does. You should have a good idea. Or if you don't, you should be able to very quickly look at your character sheet, especially ones in D&D Beyond. That's all electronic. You click on it and it explains shit. I think it even gives page numbers if that's your jive to like tell you what it does. Be an iPad kid and click on that shit, my dude. Being the new guy to the group, I was somewhat apprehensive about posting my write-up because nobody likes it when the new guy comes in and starts preaching rules. I knew that even though I was trying to do a good thing, it might not be well received. So one of my first sentences was a caveat explaining that my intention is not to offend, make you feel dumb, or attack other players, but to explain the rules so we were all on the same page. Some of the things OP listed above perhaps should have been a question directed like to the players in casual conversation, maybe being like, hey, you know, I noticed you're struggling with your character. Do you want some help or something like that? That might help them if they like took that out on posting this then. Because then if they posted it, it doesn't come off as aggressive. It's just like, hey, I noticed in general we had some issues with some rules. Here's some common misconstrued rules or something like that. You know, because then if they're posting like, hey, sneak attack does this, or hey, fireball does that, like you're clearly like, that's to the wizard, that's to the rogue. Like you're specifically targeting maybe people and then people get offended. They're like, hey, you're fucking telling me my business. Again, that being said though, if you're gonna play in a game, read your fucking character sheet. And again, only excuse for this is, you know, one, you guys play super duper infrequently, like every 6 months or some bullshit. Two, you're an 8-year-old or like you have some sort of attention deficit disorder or something like that. But even then you should still be trying to make an effort to understand how to play so everybody else at the table can continue to do their thing and things can flow more smoothly. The last bullet point, the detailed breakdown, was almost immediately removed from the Discord by the DM for that exact reason. She explained to the DM that she knew what I was trying to do and that I had good intentions, but that she removed it because others might find it offensive. I was gobsmacked. Aside from coming from the FNG, how could a basic overview of the rules offend anyone? FNG is fucking new guy. That happened approximately 2 months ago. I was bewildered, but after asking a few questions, I let the matter rest. After all, I was the new guy. I was here to play a game, not to fight with a DM or anyone else in the group. A bit weird that the DM did that, especially because they asked/okayed for this sort of assistance. Perhaps OP worded it a tad aggressively, or it was interpreted as aggressive given the rules write-up and maybe in-game actions. Not saying that OP here was aggressive in-game towards people, but it sounds like they were annoyed with how long and frequent these pauses were happening to check on rules, so maybe they unconsciously were a little snippy. If you are in a table for a while and you are not jiving with how people play, again, this table might be one that are rule sticklers and constantly review that kind of shit. You might want to ask yourself, hey, Is this a table for me? A few days later, the DM posted this cryptic message at 5 in the morning. All D&D sessions are cancelled. Immaturity of some caused a vulnerable person to give up hope. This message is not to place blame, but to suggest everyone seek help before the struggles they face overwhelm them. Redacted was an empathetic person and would want you to get help. Now, only divine intervention can help him. So please, get help so that your loved ones do not go through what we are experiencing today. Holy shit, did the DM just say what I think they just said? It kind of sounds like they did. I would assume OP giving rules postings and asking questions wouldn't be what drives somebody to consider such a life-changing action, especially not 2 months after the fact. Continuing this though, cautiously. The content of the message was incredibly alarming. Caused a vulnerable person to give up hope? That sounded a lot like someone had died or was seriously injured. Additionally, despite the DM's assurances that she wasn't playing the blame game, the timing was incredibly suspicious. And didn't you post that 2 months ago, though? There is no way that the message was referencing anyone other than me. The DM gave only the druid an explanation. The vulnerable person was the wizard. He had gone missing and was found a few hours later alive and unharmed. Wait, the wording was very different that they said. However, the explanation came from with the strange caveat not to share anything with the rogue, other than the fact that the wizard was alive. I didn't learn about any of this until about a week ago. That's when the rogue and the druid asked me what kind of vibes I felt from the campaign. I didn't initially question the message at all because it was evident the family was going through a difficult time and I didn't want to pry. I answered fairly vaguely at first. I hadn't told anyone else about the part of my post that was taken down, assuming correctly that it had been taken down fast enough that they hadn't seen it, and incorrectly assuming they were part of the offended party. Like I mentioned before, I wasn't looking for fights, but after thinking for a few minutes, I had a gut feeling that I should speak up. So I told them about my suspicion that I was at fault for causing something. The druid immediately filled me in on all the missing pieces I didn't have. It turns out a few hours after I posted my write-up and it was taken down, the wizard had gone missing for almost the entire night and had attempted to commit suicide. I still don't know all the details regarding his disappearance or suicide attempt, and frankly, I don't want to know, but he is by his own admission doing much better now. Okay, wait, hold on. That posting... Okay, I misread here. So that happened, they posted about 2 months ago, and then not long after that was when this blew up. Something happened, and then like a week before this was posted, this is when, okay. I'm catching myself up here. I misread some stuff, and I was like, wait a fucking minute. Like 2 months is a long time. Okay, given the fact that it sounds like they're not to inform the rogue. The rogue, by the way, is not one of the family members. It kind of sounds like the rogue was maybe bullying the wizard out of game. To me, at least, it sounds like that because the druid, who is also not a family member, told OP, who is the bard, to not tell the rogue. Which makes me think it has something to do with the rogue. Unless OP isn't telling us something here, I don't think the rules write-up and post would have been the driving force behind this, to be honest. I think it's something to do with the rogue. After his attempt, the rest of the party, excluding the druid, decided to quietly kick the rogue and I from the campaign without telling us anything. The druid started getting weird vibes after talking to the wizard, and she, quote, immediately knew in my gut that he was lying to me. It came out during the discussion that the rogue and I had been kicked from the group, and she was utterly confused. She asked the wizard if we knew. He said yes, that all communication had been very clear. So she then asked us if we were aware that we'd been kicked, and both of us, independent of the other, answered that no, we weren't aware of anything being amiss other than whatever had happened to the wizard happened and that he was alive. Okay, if they wanted to kick Rogue and OP, not the OP, Rogue and OP, to me that's perfectly fine. Tables can do whatever the fuck they want. But they should tell them that they're out. That's at least common courtesy. To then lie about it is really fucked up. The druid then wrote a tactful email explaining to the DM that she didn't know how the situation was handled and that she and the rogue would be leaving the group. Which is weird because the rogue was kicked from the group. Perhaps an hour later, I got a message from the wizard saying that he had cut contact with the druid and the rogue. I decided to talk to him and ask him what the fuck had happened. Which is also weird because He's supposedly been kicked from the group, so why is this guy talking to him? Why is the wizard talking to him? I played dumb, pretending like I hadn't been speaking to the druid and the rogue and knew almost nothing at all about the situation. Everything he said was a blatant lie. He started out by insulting the rogue, calling her a dependopotamus and accusing her of playing the victim in any given scenario. What if they're a military family? Dependopotamus is a word I've heard with military families. He accused the druid of, quote, cyberbullying, the tactful emails she wrote apparently being that, and constantly painted himself as the good guy or person who attempted to communicate and resolve things peacefully, when in reality, I hadn't exchanged any message with him beyond character creation and asking him if he was okay after he'd been found alive. He basically accused me of trying to usurp the DM when I was explaining the rules and that I was, quote, a huge asshole to the whole group and, quote, whatever you did, every single D&D, or what you did, excuse me, every single D&D group would have blown you up for. I don't know about that. He also asserted that 99% of the information you put out was so wrong for our characters. I'm a little confused on that one. Wild, considering I got it from your character sheet, dumbass. I pointed this out to him in much kinder words, and he deflected by saying, yeah, but you cannot see their actual background info for the character. Only the DM can. Okay, so then are they homebrewing? He said that I played a shitty game and blamed everybody else. All right, this is a little bit wild. I'd be glad to be out of this group. This table sounds like it's a lot to deal with. I'm personally not a rules lawyer, but I would be tired of stopping every 5 to 10 minutes to read up on a rule or have players that were not clearly putting in the time to learn how to play their characters, at least on a most basic of level. What really confused me was that he didn't seem to harbor any ill will towards me. Quote, dude, I'm fine with you. My mom definitely is fine with you and thinks you're a sweetie, naive, but a sweetie. But then he does a 180 and a few paragraphs later goes on to say, quote, your well-meaning thing made my mom spend an entire week trying to avoid me tanking, and then she had to spend 48 hours consoling my sister and my dad because everything pointed to me being dead. What? And when I returned, she did everything in her power to make it so you, the rogue, and the druid could still play a damn game. That was completely false. The DM sent out her cryptic immaturity of others message 4 days after I'd posted my write-up, so he couldn't have been tanking for a week. Additionally, the DM sent a message the next day after the immaturity of others message. Oh, tanking. I think he's referring to his mental health here. Okay. I've been playing a lot of WoW recently, and I heard tanking. And I also think when my players also talk about tanking in 5e, where like the party tank is soaking up all the damage they are tanking. And so I was very confused. I misread that entirely. Jesus Christ. Where I was like, this kid's complaining that like he couldn't tank. And the DM's like his mom stopped him from tanking because of the way, like, I was like, why are we talking about tanking? Like, what does this have to do with your wizard tanking damage? Like, what the fuck? God, dog brain. I'm sorry. I have dog brain sometimes. Divine Intervention came through and now we start again. D&D is still likely shelved until we can all sort through these early days. So the part about her having to console his sister and father is also blatantly false. I mean, I'm sure she had to console him about something. Something's up with these people. Okay, again, this is a blessing in disguise that you are no longer a part of this table. Just don't question it too much, and I want to be honest, just move the fuck on. Some people are going to be shady, some people are going to be two-faced, some people have a lot of shit going on. It happens. Just block them and move on. It's going to be better off for your health. After a bunch of back and forth, I disengage from the conversation. I do eventually want to talk to the DM, his mom, and ask her if she really shares the same sentiment her son does, and if so, why she didn't communicate that to me at all. If you have a problem with me, let's talk it out. None of this cryptic cloak and dagger shit. I do want to talk to her, but I currently lack the energy to keep up with any further mental gymnastics. So I'm currently just trying to process everything that happened, and I'll go through with it at a later time. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. TLDR attempted to explain the rules to a group of newbies. The wizard and his family gets offended and tries to harm himself. He and his family blame me for trying to usurp the DM / playing a shitty game. OP, if you for some reason happen to see this video, for the love of Melora, just drop this and move on. It's not worth the energy. Whatever they say is probably not going to be the truth anyway, so just move on. Find a better 2024 5e based table and get back to gaming again. Just move on. It'll be better for your mental health. Okay, our last story is from user Owlaholic68 and is titled Prospective Player Wanted to Creep. TLDR, a prospective player asked if he could listen in on an IRL session to get a feel for the group playstyle without the other players knowing he was there. Posting this because someone just reminded me of this story. I was recruiting for players to join a campaign in progress. Found this player on a local looking for group. They seemed okay. Not the greatest. They wanted to play a homebrew race even though I said no homebrew races. We talked that through and came up with a better character that fit, but I was going to invite them to sit in on a session to see how they meshed with the group. Normally a player brings a first draft of their character sheet or plays an NPC, or maybe they just sit and hang out. Not a bad idea, especially if you don't have a history with that player and that player with the group. That way everybody can kind of get a feel for each other without any major investment occurring. Nothing wrong with wanting to initially bring a homebrew race, though, if DM and OP said no. If DM/OP here said no in the initial advert for the table and they still did, it's kind of shitty, but it does happen. Perhaps they misread or didn't read that part of the advert. This is assuming there was one. This player wanted to sit in and listen on the session, but he didn't want me to tell the other players that he was there. He proposed hiding in an adjacent room and eavesdropping and didn't understand why I immediately said, "No damn way, bro," and that I wasn't comfortable with that. Also, and I don't think this had come up yet, but we don't play at my house. Anyway, I said, "I don't think this campaign is a good fit for you," and I blocked him. I'm gonna be honest, that's really fucking weird. If someone is coming to see how everybody plays, maybe not be sneaky about it. Also a bit weird to be inviting random people over to see how the party meshes. Perhaps have the DM and whoever lives where they play D&D to have like at a public place to meet, just to make sure this rando is not like completely off their rocker. You know, go to a public place, maybe a nearby friendly local gaming store, and just play something there with them to see how they act. I personally wouldn't want a stranger in my house that isn't even a part of the gaming group yet. Good on OP for just saying no and kicking them. That is not how you act. The problem player, not OP. Okay, everybody, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you guys all for hanging out. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Catch me on Twitch if you're interested. Please let me know what your thoughts are on any of these stories. Please, please, please. And I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye, everybody.